So I guess the first thing to do is roll call. Summer is not here. I am here. Karen,
Here.
Jim, Christo. So I guess Jim, Christo.
Jim, I see Jim is here.
I see Jim too. Okay. I'm happy to switch back and forth. Chris Freeze.
Here.
Cassie Giddings. I see you. Sean McFadden.
Yeah, sorry, I had a double mute going on.
Okay. Lisa.
I'm here. Thank you.
Good. Chris Pearson.
I'm here.
Steve Pine. Steve Pine. Not here. Kathy Roche.
Here I am.
Morgan Schmidt.
Here.
Okay. Elizabeth Rhodes sends her regret. So the next order of business is to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Anybody have any changes to the last meeting's minutes?
I don't have any changes, but I had a question.
Okay.
Under the neighborhood reports, the actual updates weren't put into the minutes. And I find those really helpful to read what other neighborhoods are doing. Is there any way that that can be included in the minutes in the future?
Okay.
That is, yeah, so Kayla, our recorder, can answer that question. I don't think we do include those.
So this is Kayla, and I apologize for the lack of voice. Trying to recover that back. So we normally try to keep the minutes very, very brief. And then if anybody wants any more detail to the meetings, they can always go back and listen to the recordings. Karen, if you would like, I can, kind of like what I used to do, I can add some bullet points, just very brief updates, if that's what you guys want.
Okay, Summer is here, so I'm turning the meeting over to her. We have all checked in. We've got a couple missing. But we're about to approve the minutes with the discussion that we had about including the reports from the neighbors.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, over to you, Summer.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I'm late joining the meeting. I apologize. I am still grabbing the agenda.
And Summer, while you're doing that, who was the second on that motion? I did not hear.
John.
John?
Sean.
Oh, Sean. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Sean.
Great. And have we had the vote?
Summer?
So we had a motion and a second. Do we have a vote to approve the minutes? Everyone voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion passes. Thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm still getting the ball rolling here. Appreciate it.
You're awesome, Summer. We're grateful for you.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Grace. Okay.
Hi.
One moment. All right. Do we have any public comments, Michaela?
We have a few attendees, so I'll just say at this time, if you're hoping to provide a public comment, if you could please raise your hand. If you're calling in on your phone, that is going to be *9 to raise and lower your hand. If you are on your desktop, towards the bottom of your screen is an option to raise the hand. So if you could do that now, we'll see if anybody has public comment. Seeing none.
Okay. Let's move on to NLA business. We are looking at a summary of the Transportation Bond Oversight Committee. They're working with a 5-year capital improvement plan and making project recommendations. And Michaela, we have an update for that.
So last week, we had sent out the links to the recommendations that the Transportation Bond Oversight Committee had made to council earlier this month, and that was through a work session. And so the ask was that you would take a look at those final project recommendations, that you would maybe take a look at the council meeting if you felt compelled, talk to your boards, gather just general thoughts from members, and then we would come together and discuss that. And so I think today what we're just looking for is general themes. I would love to know what you're hearing out there, if there's anything that you're wanting to do as a committee for this initiative, if you wanted to write council in support of, or if you had other thoughts. We have Ryan Oster here, who is the staff liaison to the Tboc, and he can answer some questions if there are any. So with that, I think we'll just open up the floor. I know Cassidy, you are the only one that had sent in a letter that was on behalf of River West. So if you wanted to share that, that would be appropriate at this time.
Okay, can I do that now? Yeah. What I'm gonna do is ask Michaela to forward the letter after this and just give some quick highlights so that you guys have at least the themes. River West feels like the synergy of the road projects is not related to safety, but rather synergy with other infrastructure. And they feel like pedestrian safety is at risk. Namely, Galveston is an area that we've been, asking the city to do some work on, and we don't see that's in the GO bond, and we don't see that that's a priority. And so we wanted to draw that to their attention. We definitely support the bicycle and pedestrian safety projects. We would prefer to see those projects implemented sooner because of the potential of positive safety outcomes. We feel that the Portland Avenue GO bond project has no clear scope, and the city staff will move forward with that project without taking neighborhood feedback into account, much like Newport Avenue and past NSSP projects and Galveston safety concerns. And we do have a board member who's on the TBOC as an alternate. She's made recommendations that the city makes available all draft and project plans for citizens to review to gain a better understanding of projects, the impacts and benefits, and garner community support. And so far, she said she hasn't seen that happen. I believe this is one avenue for that to happen. Implementing these suggestions a long way in showing support for comments and concerns that we received from many members over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. This is open floor, so feel free to unmute yourself and speak if you have comment.
Yeah, this is Jim. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thanks, Jim.
Okay, as far as the priority ranking of the projects by the Transportation Committee, I know I had sent in a letter to the committee because unfortunately the November meeting was the same time as the NLA meeting. And I quoted an opportunity to take an early lead on addressing climate change by using that as a factor in ranking the projects. And I'm not sure they did that. And one of the projects I thought would have great benefit to the most people would be the intelligent transportation infrastructure. In other words, making all the lights not consistent, but and I can't throw the right word right now. So you wouldn't have to go to every intersection and stop and wait for the light. They synchronized. And I've seen where that's happened in other locations, and it really makes a tremendous difference in traffic. And so my suggestion was to move the priority of that up. And I saw the latest outcome, and it's not even listed, so I'm not even sure what's going on there. But I think Bend was uniquely suited to do that. And I hope that, this will be reconsidered at some point in the future, because I think intelligent, traffic light scheduling can really have a great impact on reducing emissions in the city. Thank you.
Ryan, did you have any insight on where that fell within the project?
Yeah, thanks, McKay. I didn't want to interrupt, so I apologize.
Right.
And then I was a couple minutes late. But yeah, whatever the easiest format is, I'm happy to kind of touch a little bit on both what Jim and Cassie had said. But to your point, Jim, yeah, you're not going to see the $5 million dedicated to ITS show up on this first 5-year CIP. Problem being is that it's very not well defined, not only in our transportation system plan, but the city itself doesn't have an ITS plan. So Deschutes County does. And so in light of not having it show up, but based on some of the factors that you just commented on, we do have Kittleson, which is a transportation consulting firm here in town. We have them under contract. And one of their first things that they're charged with doing is to take a deep dive into ITS and come back to Tboc with what they think this money could be spent against. So we are going to see some action on that front. And then if Tboc and the committee feels that there's a priority project or something that comes out of that, I think you'll see them actively trying to get it onto our capital improvement plan. We just didn't feel confident enough today to actually earmark any specific money because it's too broad and we need to do some homework first. But I think you are correct. There's some wonderful opportunities there, whether it's signal timing or whatever the case may be, to invest some of that $5 million here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, just as a response, if you want some ideas, I've got a lot of ideas and I'd be happy to share them with appropriate people. So just give them my email, because I've already half designed it in my own minds. So
yeah.
Anyways, I make that offer. Thanks.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, that's where we're in the initial stages here of identifying the very things that you're noting. So yeah, happy to get any feedback we could on that, and we can go evaluate that with Kittleson. And kind of, I envision we're going to come together with a list of ITS projects that will probably also get prioritized in a similar manner that we did the rest of the bond work. So I think we're going to see some ITS projects coming out of this, and would definitely like to make sure we're on the same page with the public here. And then Cassie, I think there was a couple of things mentioned there, and I apologize if I don't hit them all. You'd mentioned Galveston Corridor. So just so you know, I think you're correct. The GEO bond does not address anything on Galveston. That wasn't identified as a near-term need according to the CTAC and the TSP. But we do have it programmed in a separate funding bucket. So we have our normal capital plan. So we have a transportation plan, a sewer plan, a water plan, and this new one is the GEO bond plan. So that's what we're going to get adopted. But back to the original transportation CIP, you will see that Galveston does exist on that plan. And the goal is to start construction on the Galveston Corridor sometime in fiscal year 23. So likely in the FY, calendar year 24 into calendar year 25, but we do have just over $4 million programmed to do the Galveston improvements along that corridor here within the next 5 years. So the bond isn't covering it, but the transportation fund does have that as a high priority. And then there was a mention of the Portland Avenue, and I didn't quite catch. There was something about needing a better defined scope.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. So yeah. So, and I guess I'll share with you at least what I'm tracking at this
Go ahead.
point.
I don't know if you have time.
Yeah, if that's okay.
That's fine. What I'll have to, I'm just going to have Michaela forward our comments, and then you can follow this up
Yeah,
later and
that's
make sure
perfect.
everybody else gets theirs included. So thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. Morgan, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, just really quick, the Larkspur Neighborhood Board had some curiosities around how to best advocate for Pettigrew safety improvements. Do you have any updates or thoughts on that for us?
So, yeah, so do you mean Pettigrew itself or Pettigrew as you get further north? And because I remember being at the Larkspur, right? There was a
Yeah,
lot of comments around the physical street of Pettigrew itself, right? Is that what you're referring
I
to?
think that's what they're asking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This is where it's very interesting to me. If you look at the GeoBond map and what we're scheduled to build, we're going to make those intersections improvements at Bear Creek and Pettigrew. And I mean, everybody's familiar with that four-way stop that is a high crash rate intersection in town.
Right.
So we are showing that on the GeoBond 5-year CIP. There's also pedestrian improvements along Bear Creek. And this is where it gets interesting, is one of the key routes identified is actually on 27th. And so, it's debatable. Is 27th Street the best street to push pedestrians and bikes to make it a key route? Or is something like Pettigrew that parallels it maybe a better option? Because you can almost get just as far north-south, from Reed Market north as you could on 27th as you can on Pettigrew. So that is interesting to, I think, maybe look at, is as that project gets closer, maybe Pettigrew is a better option for a key route than 27. So that's when I think we're going to work closely with Tboc and with yourselves. And if there's a better idea, we take this from the 30,000 foot level down the TSP, and now we're trying to make it a reality. So certainly need to take a deeper dive into these, but I think that's one we should certainly debate. And the other project that's coming up pretty soon on Pettigrew, you're going to see construction in is one of the septic to sewer projects that had Bayou and Pettigrew. So we will be doing some street improvements. It's not intended to be a full-blown all of Pettigrew bike lane, sidewalks, curbs, but that's a start. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to debate this 27th versus Pettigrew key route. I think that's a good conversation to have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not seeing any other hands up, and I'm not hearing of a consistent theme to where a NLA wide letter might be appropriate. So I encourage the individual NAs to please submit comment as Cassie has from River West, and I think we can move on. Kathy, did you have comment?
Yeah, I had a quick comment.
Okay.
Will there be any more interaction with the NAs as these projects get implemented within NAs or adjacent to NAs? Or is this our last opportunity to speak or forever hold our peace?
No, not at all. Yeah, no, always an opportunity there. Yeah, so the Bond Oversight Committee, I envision working very closely with this group here and with the NAs to make sure that the Oversight Committee is capturing the priorities of work, right? I mean, it's at some point that committee's got to come together and make a decision.
Right.
And it might not be in line with what everybody wants, but no, that we're going to adopt a 5-year CIP. So just to make sure everybody's tracking, on Wednesday of this week, there will be a hearing in front of City Council, and anybody who wants, whether it's this group or as individuals, will have an opportunity during the council meeting to provide feedback to council right then and there. And council can make whatever decision they would like. They can go with what we've got recommended here from staff and Tboc, or they could make an adjustment right there on the fly, and that's totally fine. But this isn't the set in stone, once council adopts something on Wednesday, you can't touch it again. So we come back to the city council at least once a year to revisit our CIPs. Normally it's at the budgeting period. So, in the June, July timeframe. But we do that every year on every one of our programs. And so there's going to be a continual conversation. And I think one especially that this group will hopefully continue to be very invested in is what was kind of known as the Neighborhood Street Safety Program. It's known by a different name. It's the Local Residential Safety System or Program in the bond, but it's the same thing. So we're going to charge forward with delivering that same list of 25 prioritized projects that this group had identified as being, this is where we want that focus to be. So, but that list can change as well. If this group wants to reevaluate that and make a follow-on recommendation to Tboc, they can say, hey, we want to take this, $1 million of local residential money for fiscal year 23 and reprioritize it or repackage those 25. So lots of opportunities moving forward to re-engage and keep this. I mean, we're going to keep evolving this over the next 10 years as we deliver it.
Councilor Perkins, would it be appropriate for us to ask that you summarize the NLA comments at the public hearing?
Happy to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lisa, did you have something?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, why are we changing the name? We made such good traction with SST.
No, I think that's a valid point. I think on paper, because the way it was presented to the voters, it was called the Local Residential Street Safety. But to the public, I think we want to stick with the branding that works, unless you all feel differently. I don't know why we wouldn't call it the Neighborhood Street Safety Program. So I think we're going to continue to try to do that. You just might see it appear as a different name on a financial document or somewhere else. But yeah, I appreciate that comment, because I've been on the fence of whether or not we really dive all the way in and call it a local residential street safety program when we already have in my opinion, a very successful system in place. So why not keep doing what we're doing?
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate those comments. We all worked really, really hard on NSP. We worked really hard on prioritizing all of those projects. So, the neighbors are just getting used to that name. So
you're right.
That's great.
Okay.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, Michaela, what can you tell us about short-term rental data?
Yeah, so this is just a quick update for you all. At the last meeting, Councilor Broadman did ask staff to look into a better way of tracking short-term rental data. That is a topic that several of you have brought up as wanting to be covered at an NLA meeting. And so I wanted to share that information. I know that they're working on how they're going to track that data, how we're going to present it to the public and council. So it's happening, and I think that we'll be in a good position to follow that as a committee. But that's it for now. So Ian, if you have anything to add, I would be happy to let you take the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Part of this is, I think, to be responsive to concerns that the city and council members are hearing about connections, at least perceived connections, between the short-term rental market in Bend and housing availability and affordability. So there is interest among some in the community in increased regulation. Part of, I think, making policy choices, if your council, or recommending potential policy choices to council if your staff is having good data. So there is a survey that's being put together. Part of it is getting data on short-term rentals, period. We have what I would call a pretty robust licensing and enforcement system. Not everybody recognizes that, but we do. But part of collecting data, I think, is to see what's out there and also see if we can figure out if there are connections between the number of rentals we have and housing affordability, and what that might suggest for potential changes for our short-term rental regulatory scheme. So nothing specific is being proposed yet. It's not even a given that staff will recommend and council will consider anything, but we're trying to establish kind of a factual background so we can figure out what we might look at.
Thank you for that update. Appreciate it. Okay, we are running short on time, but I do want to do a couple quick liaison updates. Sean, can you give us a 1 to 2 minute update on the sounding board to house our neighbors?
Try to keep it to one. You can ask questions if you want. So I joined the 8th meeting. It was my first meeting, but it was the 8th meeting where the recommendations that the prior 7 meetings had created were voted on and forwarded to city council. Actually, I believe they were forwarded to Eric, city manager. I was the sole dissenting vote. The reason behind choosing to vote against them, the recommendations were basically the responses were overwhelmingly against these actions on the survey. And basically, it's having the experience that I had with all of one meeting, all I basically had to go off of was what the responses were. When they were overwhelmingly negative, I voted the same way. I did have some personal concerns as to on the 2 main issues, which were homeless camps, whatever you want to call them, and the permitting of parking RVs and driveways. But that didn't weigh in at all. It was my vote was based 100% on the survey responses.
Thanks for that, Sean. I guess I didn't realize that our liaison position was a voting position.
I'm not sure I was aware of that either until I got there.
Right. Good to know. Well, thank you. I appreciate your participation.
Thanks, Sean. And yes, they decided to have an additional meeting, which will be Wednesday, December 15th from 9 to 10 a.m. So I believe, Sean, you're planning on being at that one as well.
Yes, I have an overlap at the moment, but I'm working on that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Lisa, how about for NART?
Yes, we had a NART meeting on November 30th, which seems like a couple of weeks ago. I guess maybe it is. I would have to say I would categorize this particular NART meeting as one of the most active, constructive, and engaged meetings I have participated in with NART in at least 5 years. We covered a lot of topics. We talked about the Good Samaritan program, talked about climate-friendly and equitable communities. And I guess that's my biggest message is out of NART, there is a huge plea that there is some kind of communication that, and we've talked about this at the NLA, some kind of communication out to the neighbors to try to explain what's going on so we don't get ourselves backed into a corner like HB 2001. Where the NART representatives are definitely feeling like neighbors really don't understand what's going on and what will happen with code changes related to this particular executive order from Governor Brown's office. We had the opportunity to talk about the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance, and we had the opportunity to go around. I think the overwhelming theme from neighborhoods is people are seeing a lot of construction and a lot more applications for some very big projects. We talked about approximately 3,000 proposed units in about 4 neighborhoods, and a lot of these are apartments. Very few of them are affordable housing. They are market rate apartments. So we still have a lot of tension in the neighborhoods around that construction and some of the council goals. That's it. Oh, let me add, there is a group through the Land Use Working Group, Land Use Chair Networking Group that is involved in creating a presentation related to the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. And we'll be working with Michaela to see if there's something that we can do from the neighborhood perspective to get involved in that conversation and create some kind of program for educating people.
And Lisa, that program that you're talking about and that coordination is going to happen through NART?
Actually, I think it's going to be a combination, NART as well as land use. And okay. Michaela and I and Damien, I think, are meeting on Wednesday.
Okay. And I would like to see this group, if we believe so, to show even just with emotion, just an informal statement of support for preemptive communication and a request for council to really take the topic seriously and communicate to their best ability with the neighborhood. And if someone could make a motion that is more eloquent than that.
I don't think I understand yet what the motion meant.
That's fair enough. Let me try again. So I move that the NLA make a statement of support to city council and a statement of support of neighborhood association roundtable in their efforts to encourage communication between city government and the citizens.
On the topic of climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking.
Thank you. Yes.
So moved.
Oh. So we've got a move first from Dave. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Everyone in support, say aye. Hand raised.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion, oh, so I see Cassie is opposed. Motion passes. And Michaela, what's the best way to communicate that statement of support? Can we just do that through Councilor Perkins? Is that something I can do as chair?
Yeah, so we're gonna meet later this week with Damien, Lisa, and I are, and so we can talk to him a little bit about what their schedule is and plans moving forward. I'll figure out if it's a letter or in being involved in a work session. I don't know how that's gonna work, but I will get you some answers.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, we're late for the DEI seminar, so
Yes, we are. So I am going to ask that we table our last item, which is Jim's letter. It is an important conversation that I want to have, but I also need to get this group over to the DEI lab.
I agree. So moved.
Okay. Anything else, Michaela, before we switch over?
Just everyone remember we have elections in January. We'll have a full meeting at that time too and be able to really dive into some of the topics that we highlighted today. And in the meantime, through the holidays, I'll try to keep you informed via email. I hope you have a great time with your families.
Thank you, Michaela, as always. And happy birthday, Lisa.
Happy birthday.
All right. So how do we switch over?
I sent an email out earlier. It should have your links in it right under the NLA